Alabama and Florida was a bit more entertaining than I thought it would be. The Gators gave it a good run in the second half. Had they not made all those defensive mistakes in the first half, jumping off sides, just doing stupid things on third downs to make them more easy to convert, maybe they could have. And the bad clock management at the end of the first half dug them a hole down to 18 points. And then they almost made it back 35-31 and made it a game, certainly. So does Notre Dame, do they have the ability to take anything from that glimpse of hope to challenge Alabama?
Well, I think if they are going to, they're going to have to rely on Ian Book's arm. The problem that Notre Dame has that Florida didn't have or does have is that they don't have a Kyle Pitts. And Ian Book is not the same quarterback as a Kyle Trask. And in all reality, Kyle Trask should be winning the Heisman Trophy coming up on January 5th. He's not going to, but he should be doing it. And if he doesn't win it, it's because Devontae Smith should be winning it. So, Florida had these two playmakers, and in doing so, Alabama had to scheme differently to try to make sure that Kyle Pitts did not get the football. You saw it a little bit later on in the game where Pitts was starting to get more open over the middle. He obviously got open in the end zone with that tremendous catch that he made late in the fourth quarter. But the other thing is him being double teamed and Alabama focusing on him on the defensive side was able to open up the plays that you did see with Grimes making that catch early in the third quarter, with the way that you saw, Tony and those players making the big plays that they did. And that was the scheme. Notre Dame really doesn't have that. And I think that, with Notre Dame, this is when you use the word team, Notre Dame is the one that you kind of look at because of, outside of Ian Book, they have a great running back, but it's going to take playmakers. And I don't know if they absolutely have that on the offensive side of the football. And no, I don't really think that right now this game is going to be extremely close. I don't think that Notre Dame is going to be able to play Alabama very well. I don't think that Notre Dame matches up with Alabama well, where Florida did. And if you were talking about the weakest part of the defense for Alabama, that is going to be their secondary. And you saw that throughout the SEC championship game. And I think that with Notre Dame, Ian Book is a playmaker. He is absolutely going to be a guy that can make something out of nothing. I go back and I look at the North Carolina game and how many times he turned negative plays or plays that were just taking too long and he couldn't find anybody open and turn that into positive yards or first downs or touchdowns. And it's going to take stuff like that to keep them in this football game. Playing Clemson the second time is a lot different than playing Alabama for the first time. And, Clemson got an opportunity to kind of see what they did wrong in that very first game and fix it. Notre Dame kind of saw what all they did right, and they had to duplicate it, and they weren't able to. Playing Alabama, you cannot make any mistakes whatsoever. And I think that Alabama is set up pretty well to be able to win in this game, playing at the Rose Bowl that they are playing at inside of AT&T Stadium.
Michael Mayer is the next in line of great Notre Dame tight ends. He's a freshman, but he's not in the Kyle Pitts league. To your point there, Joe, he's just not got the experience, but he's a tremendous young tight end. And Notre Dame, as you well know, as a guy that follows the NFL, has produced really good wide receivers, but they've been those big, high point the football, box people out, big body guys, not the burners downfield. Braden Lindsey was the guy that was supposed to be that guy. This particular season, he's been banged up by injuries, hasn't played much, but Notre Dame's been trying to extend the field and get that kind of wide receiver in on campus, and they're just getting there now, but probably not that kind of take the top off the defense kind of guy to stretch out Alabama. Notre Dame and Alabama, of course, the first game of two of the doubleheader in the playoffs. So, Joe, did you have a strong opinion about the fourth spot? Because I basically felt as though Notre Dame and Texas A&M had very comparable seasons, records, resumes, the whole deal. I didn't like that one got left out, but I didn't disagree with Notre Dame.
No, personally, I believe that Texas A&M should have been. Honestly, I would have even made an argument that Florida should have been in over Notre Dame and definitely over Ohio State. But I think that what happened is I think the committee kind of worked backwards with what was going on, and I don't think the committee wanted to have Texas A&M and Alabama play again, and this time it would be in Texas in front of 20 to 25,000 people, however many people is going to be made inside of AT&T Stadium. And I think that was part of the reason for saying, let's put Notre Dame in. They did beat the number one team in the nation. That was their best team. That was their best win on their resume, and then give them another opportunity. I think it was more about the fact that the committee actually allowed Ohio State in with the circumstances that do surround them and the lack of football games. And honestly, they struggled against Northwestern. That was a football game where Northwestern shot themselves in the foot multiple times. Ohio State made turnover after turnover, and Northwestern was never able to really capitalize on that. Ohio State eventually took that game over in the second half, but Northwestern had its opportunities to win that game, and they ended up not doing so. And I really do believe that Ohio State should have been the one that was left out. And I think that it should have been more like Notre Dame playing Alabama and Texas A&M playing Clemson. But in that reasoning, you wouldn't have had a way to say, look, we don't want Texas A&M and Alabama playing again, so we're going to have to put Texas A&M at number 3 where they play Clemson and Notre Dame plays Alabama. I think that it was more about Ohio State getting in than having Notre Dame and Clemson play for a second straight time and a third time this football season. I think that's the reason why the committee went the direction that they did. In all honesty, I do feel worse about these group of 5 schools because, going back to what we were talking about with Brian Harsin, is they basically are being told now, unless you have the greatest season of all time, you're not even going to get to sniff the college football playoff. And this is the one year where they had more of a reason than any to make it into the college football playoff. And look, Alabama, if they would have lost to Florida, then you could have made a reason for Alabama and Florida both being in, Clemson, Ohio State being in, and there probably wouldn't have been too much of an argument on it. But with Florida losing and Alabama winning, with Clemson beating Notre Dame, you really had an opportunity to kind of help and make this kind of feel a lot even. Look, it's not about ticket sales. It's not about the fact that, hey, look, Cincinnati's going to be going to AT&T Stadium and the stadium's going to be half empty. No, it's not about that because the stadium's going to be 75% empty in anyway, no matter who's going to be in there. So I think that really that's what hurt the group of 5. And if I'm the group of 5, I now start to look at figuring out, okay, what can we do to benefit ourselves, because this program and this deal is kind of a sham. And look, as far as a person that wants the most entertaining football, I'm not upset that this is our 4 best, or our 4, because I do think that these are 4 of probably the 6 best teams in the country, the other 2 being Florida and Texas A&M. And I think that's why you couldn't do it, because if you really went on based on the 4 best teams, you could have had 2 SEC teams in. You could have arguably had 3 SEC teams in, because that SEC championship 100% could have been your national championship as well. Because if Florida gets in, they probably could have beat Ohio State or Clemson, and they would have been seeing Alabama for a second time. And then this time the game would be happening in Miami, where Miami's going to have, a ton of the however many fans are going to be allowed in the stadium. So I really think that the College Football Playoff Committee was in a very bad situation to try to make something out of what kind of horrific season this has really been. But I really do think that they missed an opportunity to really grow the sport by getting a Cincinnati in. I don't so much think that a Coastal Carolina should have been in, but I think somebody like a Cincinnati that has done everything that you've asked of them and won every game in front of them should have gotten the chance to play. And if they get blown out, then they get blown out. But at least the group of 5 know, hey, we're playing for something, and you can improve the sport as a whole. And that didn't happen.
So I should have gone to the 3 spot. So you had issues with the 6 games and with the struggle against Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game.
Well, I think that Ohio State just look, as far as talent is concerned, if you are going by the eye test, absolutely you can put Ohio State in, because that's the only thing that you really have to go by with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Justin Fields has not had a great, an amazing football season. He has thrown, some interceptions that he probably shouldn't have. I don't even look at the Indiana game as one to go back and go, okay, look, they struggled against Indiana. But the thing is that with this football team, I applaud Ohio State for everything that they've done for college football to at least get the Big Ten back into starting this season. But what I think is happening is the Big Ten is kind of being rewarded for, making as many screw ups as they possibly can. And that's what's happened is they continued to screw it up. They didn't want the football season. And then you had a gigantic uproar from the football players, just like at Auburn when Kevin Steele was being rumored to be the next head coach, and the Auburn fans put out a humongous hashtag of stop the steal, stop Steele, and it eventually got the board of trustees and the boosters to change their mind about him becoming the next head coach. That was a very ground roots effort that took place at Ohio State to even get the college football season going. And I think that I understand that what their part was in this football season, even getting off the ground. But at the same time, they haven't done really anything or played a team or two teams that really shows that they are one of the four best teams in the country. And this is purely on the eye test. And it is. And unfortunately, with the eye test, you're also hurting half of your football teams, because now the group of fives are basically checked out. They know that you're never going to give them anything. And so now they're going to want change, or they're going to want to have their own group of five conference champion or group of five national championship or something along those lines. And that's going to take away from the sport and the idea that anybody can get into the college football playoff, because there is no opportunity for them.
Well, I'd say on one hand, there's no question that Ohio State was given a pass that Clemson and Alabama probably would be given too, based on the eye test that, the AP and the coaches poll, I think at 2-0 ranked them third or fourth in the country like that. And then the College Football Playoff Committee followed right in line with that. But on the other hand, I find it a bit hypocritical, possibly, when you hear Dabo Swinney, Nick Saban, and Jimbo Fisher complain about another team playing 6 games and they play 11. I would have just wanted one time for a journalist to step up and say, okay, if you were in Ohio State's shoes, because of course they never named them by name, but that's exactly who they were talking about.
Yeah.
If you were in their shoes, what would you be saying about your team? And we know that the three of them would be defending their team.
Oh, yeah.
And we're 6-0. We won a conference championship. We should be in the playoff. We're one of the best teams.
Well, and with Dabo, there's always going to be some salesmanship when it comes to you selling your team as to why you should be in the college football playoff. With Dabo, he'd already lost one football game. They had already lost a regular season game. And there was a potential that if they lost a second one to Notre Dame, that they would be out of the college football playoff. And so part of the reason with him in saying this was, hey, look, we played a full schedule. And in fact, we even invited a team into the ACC to make our league tougher. And this is what took place. And we actually lost. And if we were to lose again, then we should still be able to be in before Ohio State is, who has only played 5 football games, and their conference has made some of these most asinine and ridiculous rules that they even have now realized are totally idiotic, and they've went back on those. And that's the way that we should do it. You should look at the Commissioner Sankey interview that he did on College Game Day a few weeks ago, where he was basically taking shots at the Big Ten without specifically saying them, because he started talking about how many different games the SEC has moved around to make sure that all of their games got played except for one, which was Texas A&M versus Ole Miss. It's the only SEC game that has not happened this football season inside the SEC, and where the Big Ten, on the other hand, has canceled game after game after game and made teams, not make any real adjustments for these football teams. And, their COVID rules of 21 days and everything that they were doing was just absolutely asinine itself. And I think those were all the shots that were taken towards the Big Ten of like, look, you guys don't deserve this. And yes, there is a lot of this that is money driven, because with college football playoff comes an amount of money that the SEC as a whole will get. If they get 2 teams in, then they get that money. Same thing happens for the ACC. They get 2 teams in, they get twice the money that they normally would by getting 1 team into the college football playoff. So yes, there is absolutely a financial side of this. And in a year 2020, where every single university in college football is going to be losing money because of how much they've been affected by COVID-19, then they're absolutely going to try to get as much as they possibly can. And through all of this, nobody's mentioned the Pac-12, because that is such a bad conference. They don't have a single leg to stand on as to why they should be there. They just kind of sat back and said, yeah, you guys just go ahead and argue, because we have nobody that we can even make the argument for. That one team would have been USC, and they lost in the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about Jimbo Fisher's argument as well that's kind of amusing is that if he's looking at games played, okay, Ohio State played 6, his team played 9, Notre Dame, Alabama, Clemson, those teams played 11. So 11-9, 9-6. He played 2 less than those teams. Are they complaining about him? as much as he's complaining about the 6 to 9, what's the magic number of games?
Oh no, that's
it
our
doesn't
point.
exist.
Yeah, no, that doesn't count because he's one of us, because he's one of our guys that we want to make sure that we're all our target is the Big Ten. And with Jimbo Fisher, yeah, he had the one game that was fully canceled because of COVID-19 and because of the protocols there. But also, I mean, Ohio State up until the Northwestern game had only played one ranked opponent, and that was Indiana when they played them. Where on the other hand, you have Texas A&M that they have played and beat Florida. They have played Auburn when Auburn was ranked. They played and lost to Alabama. They've played even more ranked opponents, and arguably this is the best Texas A&M team, I emphasize team, that they have put together since being in the SEC. Johnny Manziel and the offense that they had in 2012 and 13 was extremely special, but the defense wasn't there. On the other hand, now this was one of the best run defenses in the SEC that Texas A&M had, and you had a quarterback that was having his kind of swan song amazing football season and what Kellen Mond has doing. And now you can kind of see what Jimbo Fisher is starting to build at Texas A&M, and you can look at the recruiting rankings, and that's going to be an extremely important part of this. And another reason why you go back to what Auburn has done with hiring Brian Harsin is Auburn is behind a major wall, because now they're not only behind Alabama and LSU in recruiting, they're also behind Texas A&M, and that's just in their own division. And so these schools, especially Texas A&M, are just skyrocketing up the recruiting rankings because they are getting the facilities and they are getting the support needed to build the program that they have always envisioned. And Texas A&M is finally getting that. And it's now no longer even about the University of Texas, because the Longhorn University is not even in their vision anymore, because they are now trying to play for a college football playoff spot, not trying to be the number one team in the state of Texas, because they already are.
And when it all shakes out, though, Ohio State beats 2 top 15 teams and Texas A&M beats 1.
Yep.
You can shake this out a number of ways.
Yep.
Joe Hunk, 97.7 ESPN The Zone. Joe, it's always a good time. Always learn a lot and enjoy having you on.
I absolutely appreciate it, and I promise you it's going to get even weirder now with Brian Harsin as the head coach at Auburn, because it is a new day in Auburn, and one day we'll get to talk about everything that took place with this coaching hire.